I will leave tonight for Ramat Darom, where Jennifer and I will be once again spending the holiday. We'll miss you. We have many people who will not only lead the service, but give over words of Torah, and I'm grateful to all of them in advance for the Torah that they will share. I want to share a short word about a line from the Haftorah and a short teaching from about Passover this morning. Number one, that line today is called Shabbat Hagadol, the great Shabbat, the Shabbat that comes before Passover. And most scholars believe that the source of that name comes from the ending line from the book of Malachi of our Haftorah, before Lifnei Ba Yom Hagadol V'Hanora, before the coming of that great and awesome day, looking forward to the moment of redemption, the day of redemption in the future, when the hearts of children will be turned back to their parents, when all will be, and when that happens, you know that all is made right in the world. You need no bigger sign of redemption than that moment. And I say that knowing that we will celebrate a Seder, perhaps with many children and parents and grandparents at the same table. And that conviction, most scholars say that we think about that redemption in the future on Passover because Jewish time functions as a spiral. Not a straight line. There are things which repeat themselves over and over and over again. There are seasons, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, the fall and the winter and spring. Things repeat themselves over and over again, and yet they don't only stay the same. They are not doomed to remain as they were before, but a spiral, meaning that we sense things are the same, but we also believe very much that they are moving in a forward direction. They're moving in the right direction. Not always a straight line, but that the holiday of Passover doesn't just celebrate now. It recalls a time when we were enslaved and when we were redeemed. And it gives us hope that though we may feel the oppression of slavery, we may feel darkness, we may feel that life is difficult now, we believe that a Yom Gadol V'Norah, a great and awesome day, is coming and is possible. And it gives us hope for a better future. A word about Passover, about the Passover preparations. There was a group who met for the Tish this past Thursday night. We spent a good hour and a half trying to work through this passage that I'm going to try and get over in just a couple of minutes. We'll see how it goes. It's a teaching from the Mea Shiloach, the Ishbitzer, the Rebbe of Ishbitz, Rabbi Yosef Mordechai Leiner, who begins by speaking about the Mishnah. And the Mishnah teaches as follows, that on the 14th of Nisan, which is the night before Passover, for us this Sunday night, we need to do the mitzvah of bidikat chametz, of checking for chametz. And in discussing how do you have to check for chametz, the Mishnah teaches that any place where you don't typically bring bread, chametz, does not require a search, whereas any place where you do does require a search. And they give the example of a wine cellar. Why a wine cellar? Perhaps because if you ran out of if you ran out of wine in the middle of the meal, you might go to the wine cellar and you might be carrying a nice sandwich with you. So what part of the wine cellar? But do you have to search the entire wine cellar? And Hillel and Shammai had an argument about this. And they expressed it in different ways. I'm not going to go into it. But one of them said that you have to search basically the entire surface of both of the rows that are nearest to the entrance. And Hillel, who was easier, said you have to search the top rows, because you're not likely to take wine from the bottom row because all of the other casks will fall down, right? So the places that you have to search are the top row, okay? If you have a wine cellar, keep that in mind, okay? But for the rest of us, the Ishbitzer Rebbe says that this idea of where do we have to search and where don't we have to search comes to teach us something very deep. That places where we don't normally bring bread, we don't have to search. We are not obligated to look around and to see if there's bread. And he says that the teaching about checking for bread is actually teaching us something about the search within ourselves for mistakes that we have made. And that actually each person not only, I would say, is allowed, but must say about him or herself, there is a place, there are parts of my life where I don't need to search. That there are parts of my life where one can say, I'm good. I know about myself that that is not something that I need to worry about. And I offer that because when I read that line, I got to tell you, I go, wow, how arrogant of a person to say about themselves, I don't need to check about that. But the truth is that each one of us, there is a forgiveness in that direction. Actually, we can say that there are certain parts of our lives where we have behaved well and where we can feel good about the people that we have been. And the Ishbitzer quotes teaching from the sages that we find in many other religious traditions as well. This is why the rabbis teach in Masechet Brachot, we must know ourselves. Leda inish b'nafshei. A person must know his or her soul. And there are parts of ourselves where we do need to search, where we need to hold ourselves responsible and ask, what is it that I need to remove from my life in order to be redeemable, in order to be the person who I can be, the person that I should be, the person that I must be. One last piece, and this is where it gets a little complicated, but when you read about 2 rows, that's what the Mishnah says, that you have to search 2 rows of the wine cellar, and then they have a debate about what the 2 rows are. When you hear about 2 rows, that reminds us of, take a look up at the second stained glass window from the left. It reminds us of the 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments. And there's a debate. Hey, I don't know if you know this, but there's a debate about what's on how the tablets of the 10 Commandments are laid out. We talked about this with our bar mitzvah a few weeks ago, but most of the renditions of it have it being where the first 5 are all on the right-hand column and the next 5 are all on the left-hand column. The first 5 are related to between God and human beings, and the next 5 the mitzvot that relate to human beings to each other. And when we have to check the first 2 rows, just sort of the top row, that makes us clear for everything else. According to one, it means you have to check the first commandment, which is I am the Lord your God, and the 6th commandment, which is don't murder. One thing between God and one thing is a belief that we have, and the other one impacts the way that we interact with human beings. But there's another way of laying out the 10 Commandments, okay? And it would be putting commandment are two different versions of the Exodus story, of the story of leaving Egypt. One of them is Arami Oved Abi. Right? My father was one Aramean. It tells the story of we actually were idolaters, and we came to believe in the one God. That is Rav, who says that you need to check to make sure that you don't believe in idols. And there's something to that. You can be physically free, but still be spiritually enslaved. We can ask ourselves, what are the things that we value in our life that we shouldn't give so much value to? Or where have we lost hope? Which is not about our physical freedom, it's about believing that redemption is possible. The second one, we have to check to make sure that we are not only good in our relationship with God, but in taking care of other human beings. Have we done enough? Have we done enough to help those who are physically oppressed? Have we done enough to help those who suffer from poverty, from persecution? And halakha, Jewish law says, halakha k'Rav Shmuel, that's the one that we must check. Before we come to the Passover Seder, the commandments that we need to be most critical of ourselves about. Have we done enough? Not for our own beliefs, although that's part of the story, but for others. And it's only then that we can sit down at the Passover table with a full heart and to know that indeed we ourselves were taken out of Egypt. Shabbat Shalom. We rise